Page Punchers!
So here we are, Super Friends. We have the latest wave of McFarlane Toys DC Direct Page Punchers action figures on the review bench. Aquaman, Aqualad, Black Manta, and the Ocean Master. Each one of these Fab Four comes with a comic book and a trading card. The fact that each one has a cover with their own character on the front certainly adds to the value of the fact that each one comes with a comic book. Each one of these figures does come with accessories. Ocean Master comes with an extra set of interchangeable expressy hands and a trident wrapped in what looks like some sort of barbed wire or something like that. Black Manta comes with his bladed spear-like weapon. I'm not exactly sure what you would call that, along with a blade for each arm that attaches to his gauntlet, and they are actually, well, they're not retractable, but you can take them out if you don't want to pose him with the big blades. Jackson here comes with his two water swords, and while it may look like he has two in his back and two in his hands, as you can see when I've turned the figure around, those blades, the handles just come right out of his back. They're not permanent, so you don't have to be like, why has he got two in his back and two in his hands? While Aquaman comes with his gigantic three-pronged trident. This thing is huge and definitely quite unique. So, now let's look at each one individually, starting with Arthur Curry, the Aquaman. This Aquaman figure is certainly very unique in its design, although I will say there are a few elements that I feel like it may have taken a little bit of inspiration from. The necklace that Aquaman is wearing really reminds me of the one he wore during the beginning of the New 52. The shoulder piece, well, that actually reminds me of the Mezco 1/12 collective shoulder pauldron that came on their figure, and also a little bit like the Injustice version of Aquaman. Also, when you compare this figure to how he looks in the comic book source material that this is based off of, which is not a bad story, by the way, it was actually a really nice story, he doesn't quite look like the source material. The boot fins are different compared to the comic book. Todd has added these kind of golden bronzy bits of armor around his pants here to cover his outer thighs. And Todd's team has definitely gussied up the shoulder pauldron armor. It's a lot more technical and complicated in comparison to how it was drawn. Aquaman's face sculpt is actually pretty good as well. Along with the paint applications, his eyes are painted on nicely, along with his eyebrows. His beard and hair are painted nicely with a lighter wash over top of the darker. So no complaints really as far as how well it's been made. The hair does look a little bit mullety when you look at him from the front. Here, he's got the shorter bits of hair right in the front and a few pieces off to the side here, one curling down here by the shoulder pauldron, but clearly this is not intended to be a mulleted Aquaman. It's just sort of the way he was sculpted for some reason. If this head sculpt slash hair sculpt is not to your liking, maybe you'll want to try some sort of a head switch. If so, then this is pretty much what you're looking at. I actually think that this head sculpt looks better on the body because it's more accurate to the comic book. It's another McFarlane Toys Aquaman head sculpt. If you collect the figures, you'll know exactly what this head sculpt is from. Other details about this figure that I feel like are worth noting, there is a nice kind of an orange wash over top of the darker orange. It's like probably actually a yellow wash that they've put over top of the orange here. I really love the belt area for this Aquaman with the great big Aquaman symbol right there in the front. All of the detail for Aquaman's pants, I love the texturing they've put there. And the fact that they have put so much detail work into, say, the side kind of outer thigh armor, and they, you know, put all that extra gussied up detail work into the shoulder pauldron and into the wrist guards slash bracers and also into the boots. The sculpted detail of this guy really makes it stand out. Here he is in comparison to a couple other Aquaman figures that I've chosen for the video. DC Collectibles New 52 and DC Essentials on the left, with the first McFarlane Toys Aquaman figure alongside a DC Direct Brightest Day Aquaman. Overall, as far as articulation, I have no idea. I haven't tried him yet, so let's find out together. Wow. Oh, dude. That torso is a lot more articulated than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I like that very much, and of course, The waist is going to give you 360, so a lot of articulation with the waist and the torso. Aquaman's noodle, that's actually really good as well. The arms, as always, are able to do, hopefully, a T-pose. Uh-oh. Oh no, we got big trouble in little Aquaman town. Oh no, the shoulder pauldron, even though it's soft, and they certainly have tried to leave a lot of room on the inside of it, definitely doesn't want to cooperate. So if you were hoping for this guy to be much more posable in the shoulder area, well, if you want the pauldron, then you don't get the posability because, well, let's just show all around. Like, can't lift his arm. What is he? How do you fight like that? If it was real, I'm sure he could fight, but that's just what it is to make an action figure, I guess. I'm not sure why they didn't put the pauldron right on his arm, as is something that is quite often done. Maybe it's because the strap would have looked out of place if they did that. Either way, on this Aquaman, you'll find a 360 bicep swivel. The other arm goes right down like that, gets plenty of articulation, and we have... Ooh, I didn't notice that. There are no scales right there on his arm. I wonder if both arms were sculpted the same. I wonder if that's the thing. Anyway, sidetracked. Oh, look, a duck. Then we have the wrists. They've got the hinge there, and, you know, they do exactly what we would expect them to do. Down here, what does he have? Let's open these. Oh, well, he does have the leg armor. And you can see the kind of articulation he has, but let's try to really open these up. Okay, so that's what he's going to get. Be aware that you've got the armor and the body colliding here. So if you can get it to slide underneath when you're doing your posing, that will probably make it better. Oh, I got a phone call. Now, aside from the groin articulation that Aquaman may or may not get, having to bear in mind the armor right here, he does have the double jointed knees that crack up enough for me, as well as a clicky rounded hinges in the ankles. Yeah, you can hear it clicking, as long as it doesn't click in a place where he won't stand, which they also pivot, and he's got the toe articulation. And next we have Aqualad, the son of Black Manta, a character that I was really hoping that Todd was going to make. And voila, here we have him before us, and he really just looks like the comic book version of the character, which is great news. That means I have other characters I can have him pose alongside that he hangs out with in the DC Universe. Something that I really like about this figure is that he seems to have all newly sculpted parts, which is neato spifferific, because how the heck would you really make this guy out of reused parts? He's got his own kind of scale mail going on there with his armor, along with the straps for his water blades there. He's got his own belt area, which couldn't have been copied from anybody else. He's just got some basic bare legs, but you do have the fins on the back and individually uniquely sculpted pieces of footwear. Everything truly looks fantastic with this figure. He is my favorite out of the wave so far. However, one place he really shines is the head sculpt. This head sculpt is, for one, sculpted like perfectly. This is exactly how I would picture a facial sculpt of this character looking. Secondarily, I think it's actually painted pretty well. The eyes, the eyebrows, the lips, everything looks pretty much how it's supposed to be, where it's supposed to be. As for how articulated this guy is, well, let's just see. That's the torso. Ooh. Ooh, yes. Yes, me likey a lot. We got the waist. That is great. I like that. That is all the articulation I need in the torso. His head is very articulated. Yep, like this. That's good. All it needs is one ball joint as far as I'm concerned. He does, on the inside here, have the socket. And that is not intended to add articulation, but just to fill in the gap when you do move the body. He's also got the full motion bicep swivels and the double jointed elbows that crunch up sufficiently. His wrist articulation is actually, I like when Todd does this. He sculpts another piece that looks like the wrist, but it's actually a hinge. I mean, that doesn't look so good when it's bent, you know, when it's open. Maybe it looks like he broke his wrist. But I do like the idea of this better than a ball, a round ball that just doesn't look right. Also, some people may argue that it is kind of cheap that his bicep just goes right onto the armor portion of his shoulder. But I think overall, it just is a neater, more tidier look. So I'm okay with that. Of course, down here, he's got the way that McFarlane attaches the legs, that McFarlane groin, plenty of articulation, nothing getting in the way because it's just a basic leg, the double jointed knees right there, and the ankle that is molded with toe articulation right there below the pivot. Okay, and now that we've looked at the pair of our heroes for this review, why don't we take a look at the villains of the story, Black Manta and the Ocean Master. Starting with Black Manta. This dude is so hyper detailed that I sometimes just look at it and try to figure out what I'm looking at. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean between the textures and the various design features and details here and there and armor plating. I'm like, what? Did we just get a sick-ass redesign of a classic character? Okay, so now that I have said all of the good things about this figure, I will tell you that I honestly am still partial to a more basic-looking comic-accurate Black Manta. Ways that I think this design could have been improved would be to paint this right back here, his air rebreather, just a silver color rather than having it black so it melds in, and possibly have designed the neck here to be a silver color along with the helmet. I mean, the Black Manta helmet looks good, it's a neat design, and I think that all things considered, it's fantastic. A side note, this Black Manta actually reminds me the most of the one that Mattel released as part of their Total Heroes line. But yeah, it would have been nice if the helmet and the neck piece had have been done in a silver color just to differentiate from the rest of the body, which again, looks fantastic. This is a great design for the character. I do think that as far as reused parts go, there's like pretty much nothing except for the hands. I believe that these are the same hands that Batman has used in the past. Here is Black Manta compared to a couple other Black Manta figures, all from Mattel, and then also now from the DC Collectibles New 52 and Rebirth DC Essentials version. As for how articulated he is, let's find out. Torso is on, whoa, that is a majorly adequate amount of torso articulation there. Whoa, now why can't they all be this articulated? This is fantastic. Of course, the waist is also going to have full rotation, so that is an amazing, that's an amazing amount of torso articulation altogether. The head is going to be on a rounded ball joint as usual, and that's very, very articulated. This guy's getting all kinds of points in the articulation department. You can see the socket, and you got the rounded hinge up here in the armpit, and the shoulder pauldrons move right out of the way to give for a fantastic T-pose. You've also got 360 biceps, swivels. You've got double jointed elbows that crunch up. The rounded hinges in the wrist, we know pretty much what they're going to do. Down here, we have the McFarlane style groin, and oh, this is the one I always check. Well, that's not too bad, actually. That could be a lot worse. Could be a bit better, could be a lot worse. Double jointed knees, and then we have right down here a rounded hinge in the ankle. And yes, it is a rounded hinge, but it's also designed to look like part of the suit by the looks of it. And of course, toe. Not too bad, not too shabby. Now let's have a look at the Ocean Master. And this dude's got a lot going for him. Like 100% newly sculpted details over the entire figure, a fantastic color palette, and all of the gold bits really stand out in contrast to all of the darker parts of his suit. Of course, we can see he's got a maroon colored rubber cape that, I mean, it's sculpted great. I love how that hangs over the shoulders. I love how good that looks. You can see it's been sculpted nicely on the inside of the cape, and it's a soft rubber. Yeah, this is okay. I know some people want cloth goods capes, and sometimes I want that too, but with this one, with a character like Ocean Master, I'm happy with the fact that this is just a rubber cape. Check out that texture up close. It almost looks like, what, cowhide or something? these gauntlets and side panels for his armor and shoulder pauldrons, the belt area, and his boots. They look fantastic. That looks awesome. Look at that, though. He's got little hearts in the front of his boots. This is also a really neat texture for the lower half of his suit. That's interesting. And you've got up here, this looks like it's made out of some sort of shell. Like it looks like it comes from the ocean. And then of course you've got down here, this, I'm assuming this on his arms and on his abdomen here is supposed to be some sort of scale mail, some sort of small, tightly woven scale mail. Fantastic looking figure. I love this so much. And here he is next to some other Ocean Masters. All three of these are from Mattel. You have the DC Universe Classic Signature Collection, you have the one that came from the box set, and you have the movie version. And of course, here he is next to the previous McFarlane Toys version of Black Manta. Man, I gotta tell you, this one is light years better. And that one was awesome too, but this one is just out of the park. But now it's time, I suppose, to find out just how articulated this guy is. I really do try to save the articulation until this segment. I try not to pose them around too much so that I can actually learn as I'm recording it. This is really good. Oh, this is so far back and even forward. That's pretty good, you know. Not, let's see, let's have them straight. Well, okay, I wouldn't say that's pretty good. It's okay. It's fairly reasonable. Oh, I just noticed too, look. His neck looks like it has gills. That is awesome. Wow, see, I'm just learning more things about this figure as I look at him. The top of his head here looks like it's got fish fins, but they actually look like fish fins. Dude, this is a great figure. Anywho, okay, so shoulders. What do we have for the shoulder pauldrons? Well, these ones are actually attached up on top of his arms, so they're not going to get in the way, at least of the T-pose. Of course, going around, you're going to find that the shoulder pauldrons will get in the way a little bit, and it's always, like I say, it looks weird when the shoulder pauldrons are attached to the body, and you try to raise the arms up, that is what you end up with. But if they're attached right here, and you lift his arms up, then the shoulder pauldrons ends up, you know, on the back of his arms, and that looks weird too. I know some people aren't really a big fan of the socket. I actually am, because it hides the articulation point. As I've said, it doesn't add to the articulation. It's never been meant to add to it. It is not a butterfly. It simply is supposed to hide the fact that the arm is articulate. Here, let me just pop it out and show. Oh, well, I wasn't expecting that to happen. Hold on a second. Here, let me just bring Aquaman back into the picture. So if you put Aquaman's arm back into the, the socket here without that, when you move the arm around, you can actually see the gaps. And this is one of the problems that a lot of figures that have the drop hinges in the shoulders, you know, the ball joint to ball joint there, they actually have. It just looks really, really ugly. So I am a fan of the socket, because as soon as you put the socket back in there, and let's just pop the arm back in, then the socket disappears inside the body and you don't end up with the ugly space. So I am a fan of these sockets. But anywho, he has the double jointed elbows and the full 360 biceps. He has, oh, the head, let's do the head. He has a head that gets bobbling closer to you. That is okay, reasonable. Then we got down here the McFarlane crotchable groin area, and what people call the diaper definitely on this one gets in the way of the articulation, along with, you know what, these little, I don't know what you would call these bits of armor right here don't get in the way. It's the only thing that hinders the articulation of the legs here is the crotch area, the diaper. I hate calling it that. Then you've got, that's okay. That's all right. And you have noisy, crunchy, double-jointed knees. They crunch up quite nicely. And we have articulation here with a rounded hinge that you can see that has been semi-sculpted to kind of look like the boot with toe articulation. Okay, so now that we have looked at all 4 figures in the latest wave of McFarlane Toys Page Puncher 7-inch action figures, Aquaman, Aqualad, Black Manta, and the Ocean Master, what do I think? Do I think that they are worth adding to your McFarlane 7-inch DC action figure collection? Or should you just leave them where they are? If you find them, just leave them where they are because they'll give you fleas. Well, as I say often, clearly you've been paying attention through this video, and you've figured out by now that I am more than just a little bit tickled with this wave of action figures. With the addition of Aqualad to the 7-inch scale DC action figure line from McFarlane Toys, we get to fill out just one more character of the Aquaman family. And if you're a big Black Manta fan, or you're just looking for a way to help fill out your Aquaman Rogues gallery, well, this Black Manta is a pretty fantastic addition. Though not accurate to current continuity, he just looks so sick. So I feel like this is a solid wave in general, and I can highly recommend you hunt these figures down and add them to your collection. Anyway, super friends, I think I'm going to cut it off here, so thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video in comparison to, or maybe in addition to, many other choices that you had. That means a lot to me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, super friends. Take care.